What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for March 22nd, 2021. We have a lot to get through today. Patch updates, Theaters of War, progress updates, a lot of video updates, as well as talking a little bit about server meshing. So let's get right into it. All right, if this is your first week in review, this is where I take all of the official news coming from Star Citizen each week, pile it into one video, and throw my opinions in there as well. And if you haven't watched me yet, I do live stream on Twitch every day but Monday to get this video out to you, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so feel free to stop by and say hello. Now, starting out with patch notes updates, we had a patch watch post from CIG this week on Spectrum, which is pretty cool. They're touching on the things that are coming to Star Citizen 3.13 that we don't see on the roadmap. So we saw some medpen updates. You'll be able to use them more like grenades now, where you bring them to your hand and then use mouse 1 to actually complete the action of healing. That's interesting because in FPS combat, that's going to be a little bit complicated. Extra steps for healing is going to be a little bit crazy. They also are considered carryables, so they can be picked up, dropped down, thrown, and so on. I assume that also means they can be stored in a container or in your armor, backpacks, things like that. So now if you ever run out on a little expedition with your friends, maybe a buddy can carry extra med pens. So a lot better. They're also giving us some updates to eyes, and specifically the irises. So there's 2 irises that are updated, and they also added 6 more. And they just look more natural. We have some kind of purpley ones and maybe a little bit more unnatural ones in the game currently. And hopefully you guys find one that looks like your eyes if you're trying to create your character or whatever your character may look like. The one on the top left I think looks most like mine, yet I still haven't found quite my eyes. I hope we can get a slider between 2 eyes like we have in other customization aspects of Star Citizen. All right, moving on to the next subject, Theaters of War. So there was an Evocati test this weekend, and I am a member of Evocati, but believe it or not, I work on the weekend, so I haven't had any opportunity to participate. I should have been able to participate yesterday, but I was called into work a little bit earlier, so unfortunately, I was not able to participate. I hope it did go well, and I hope we see it soon. The other big bit of news from Theaters of War is CIG has a new partner, Firesprite. They announced their partnership with CIG that actually started 2 years ago at the beginning of 2019. They're working exclusively, it appears, on Theaters of War, although work on Theaters of War does affect the PU, Squadron 42, and so on. Yeah, they were part of the original demo at CitizenCon 2019, I guess. So it wasn't just a small team of CIG devs, it was actually a small team of Firesprite devs. Xylo confirms this, and because I did see quite a few of, well, then Sean Tracy lied to us at CitizenCon comments, I think it also seems pretty clear that partnerships like these are weird because of maybe contracts and legal reasons that you can't really announce them right away. Let's use Ilphonic as an example with the redacted brackets that we saw for years with Star Marine. And I think some people expect this to be like Star Marine, where it's the Ilphonic drama all over again, especially with that nearly 1-year delay of the release of the post of the epic month of May. That really hinted that we were going to be playing Theaters of War in May. Kind of created that expectation of Theaters of War release in 2020. I'm a little skeptical about this. I don't think that we will be scrapping Theaters of War and throwing all their work away, seemingly like Ilphonic's situation was, but we'll have to see. They seem to be ramping up a little bit more, and I think this announcement has a lot to do with maybe the impending release to some sort of PTU of Theaters of War, but we'll have to see. Moving on to video updates, we had at first I thought not that interesting ISC, but then when you really look at it, there's quite a bit going on here. Their first featurette was on non-lethal weapons. So they start out with an interesting description of the multi-tool medical attachment.
A change to the player health system is that over time, you may start to suffer long-lasting injuries if you've been seriously injured multiple times. And what the multi-tool healing tool allows you to do is not only heal someone just by firing at them over a short distance and applying healing gel, you will also get a UI readout that does notify you of any long-lasting injuries that might not be obvious that your target has sustained, and you can advise them or use multiple healing or drug pens to top them back up again.
The big thing he talked about here was how they plan to handle damage to players, how it's going to be different, that eventually you will have more serious injuries. One thing he didn't mention is that the fact that this gun informs us will kind of make the use of medical bays on ships more usable and more purposeful in the verse. So they're not just respawn points anymore. So I find that really kind of interesting. So yeah, pretty cool. Next was the salvage attachment.
So the multi-tool salvage attachment also has two functions. It has salvage and repair. Salvaging allows you to do what we call hull stripping, which is where you can walk up to a ship or vehicle and you can start stripping away the hull that then gets stored in a canister. And that could either be sold on or kept for repair. And what repair is, it's essentially the reverse. If you look at your ship that's been damaged, you can apply what is in the canister, the material that you've gathered in the canister, to any damage that's been done to your ship or vehicle to repair it.
The big thing here is this is not just a salvage tool, it can also do repair as well. And hull stripping, it's very interesting. What is really interesting though is this going to be salvage tier 1 before we ever see salvaging from ships? I find this kind of interesting that they're showing us this first before anything related to ship salvage. So maybe this is going to be how they introduce it to us this first time, unlike mining that was done via ships first, then the multi-tool. We've also seen the Cure Life medical gun quite a bit in like sneak peeks and stuff. So what's the big difference from that gun to the multi-tool attachment we just talked about?
So we are also working on the dedicated medical gun, and it essentially gives you all of the information that the multi-tool version provides. It does give you additional functionality like being able to apply specific drugs if you want to. Now that you've got the readout that lets you know what's wrong with someone, you'll be able to look at what you've got in there. You can kind of move the sliders around and apply them at different levels and different amounts of drugs and medicine to mask those issues, which is really going to contribute towards pushing that medical role in the PU.
I like the idea of the more targeted nature of this one. It basically starts to create the medic role, and they carry, med types for different types of injuries. Maybe you can expect to have burns of some type if you spend too much time on Daymar, so you'll take specific medicine for that. Next was not something I expected to see, to be honest, but it does make a lot of sense.
So it's graded for lifting much heavier objects. It's got a much bigger battery, so you'll be able to use it for longer. And we're exploring other options like it being able to pull faster and being able to grapple from a further distance away and grapple you faster as well.
I think this tool is 100% preparation for the larger than the 1/8 SCU boxes that we have now, the larger ones that you actually see in your ships. To be used by players and moved by players. So I kind of hope this is what that means, but we'll have to see. They're also adding a standalone cutting tool.
So another thing we've been developing is the standalone cutting tool, which is the bigger, badder, better version of the multi-tool cutter. It'll be able to cut through materials quicker, it'll be able to cut through denser material, and it will be able to essentially do it all faster with a bigger battery capacity, so you can keep going for longer. So when you're cutting out those big shapes on panels and everything, it'll be the tool that you want to use instead of the mini multi-tool itself.
Now, I know we've seen the cutting action before in the Squadron 42 demo, but I don't think what we've seen warrants its own variant and giant cutting tool. So they must be doing something pretty big there, or at least planning to figure out something to do that's pretty big. So we'll have to see what happens with that. And in case you haven't been keeping up with Star Citizen's development lately, they're working on door breaching.
So the breaching charge is one of the first examples we've got of an FPS deployable. So you'll be able to take this out, put it down, it'll deploy on the surface, and the breaching charge is purely meant to bust through doors.
Nothing really new or mind-blowing here, but still excited to see this in action one day. Lastly, a weapon Kickstarter addicts have been waiting for some time now.
It's very different to any weapon that we've ever done before.
And also, it's essentially a new company.
It's going to be our best stealth weapon available. So while the radar and scanning systems pick up on IR, EM, and audio as well. This thing will essentially fly under the radar on all of those. So it's your weapon that you will be using if you want to stay stealthy.
I'm really interested to see how these rounds work against armors, and I love the idea of a stealthy weapon though, because it's just a cool concept. I just hope snipers have a similar role in terms of how much IR, EM signature they give off, because snipers are really the ultimate stealth weapon, So I thought that was a little odd that this is the stealth weapon, when in reality, that's what snipers are supposed to be. The next thing they did was a new asteroid featurette, and the guys show their work on updating the asteroids, and they touch on why this is in progress in the first place.
The main reason why we needed new asteroids was that the old ones were using and relying on old tech. Based on that, we wanted to update the process and the assets. As the Star Citizen universe keeps on expanding, there is a need for more variety for asteroids, and that's why we built that new pipeline to allow us to iterate and create more variation much more quickly than before, and with a better quality as well. Those are the asteroids that are coming to the Lagrange points in 3.13, and they might seem like a small thing, but this is Star Citizen, and the details matter.
So the rocks we have right now really aren't that varied that much, especially the mineable rocks. So I hope this update will help out with that. And as much as I hate to admit it, this is Star Citizen, and the details do matter. I mean, that's really what separates Star Citizen from other games. It's not their open development. It's not a lot of things that people attribute that to. It's really that it's the details. That's the attention to detail is what separates Star Citizen from other games. Now, the rest of this featurette was mostly visual, and there wasn't really anything to clip out in terms of discussion topic. So if you want to see more about the new asteroids coming to the Crusader system, feel free to check out the link down below. SCL was very similar with that. It was more of a how it's made, but Star Citizen when it came to props, and the specific props were weapon sights. So if you guys are interested in that, link will be in the description down below as well, but there really wasn't anything worth kind of clipping out and sharing for you guys. Now moving on to other updates, we're going to start out with a server meshing discussion, and more of a set your expectations for server meshing, because it's not as good as you think it's going to be. The original post here was asking, is server meshing in research phase or is it in production phase? I think that's pretty obvious what those two phases are. And Clive responds with, it's definitely in production phase. Exciting, right? Not necessarily. The next post, or the next section, explains that the plans beyond the first version of server meshing are in research phase, so are still theoretically possible, but we don't know. So I think the real question here is, what is the first version of server meshing? The first image here just states that it will not be dynamic, and it's just going to be fixed areas like moons and cities, and will likely travel over the server lines in quantum travel, so it won't be as jarring to the player, or, I don't know, ruin a combat experience or something like that. The next post also explains that we will not even get a single server global shard after all of this work. It's going to likely be split into regions, like the regions that we have now, US, Australia, and Europe. The first version's intention is really just to simply bring that player count up. To what, though, we're not sure. So hopefully it's quite a few players that actually kind of changes the Star Citizen experience. Personally, I am pretty content with that. I think it's very important to continue to get that out there, because it's not easy to find this information, especially when it's on Spectrum. So server meshing is thought to be this magical thing that's going to save Star Citizen, and it's certainly going to help based off the description of the first version, but it is not the savior. So keep that in mind. Moving on, we had a character tech art AMA recap from Star Citizen, and questions were, one of them was, will backpacks have exterior slots? The answer was yes, which I think is pretty cool. They also attached, they're also like attached to armor, so they're like their own exterior attachment as well. One question also was, where's the cloth physics that we saw at CitizenCon 2018? And we did see a little bit of it in 2019, I think, as well. It wasn't done, but what was done looked cool enough for them to show, and the main issue always is performance, so that's why we don't have it right now. People asked, can we have asymmetrical armor? The answer was no. Again, performance reasons. Can we have UEE stuff? No. I think obviously no. In a world that is supposed to be immersive, you cannot buy UEE uniforms. But my question is, killing a UEE officer and stealing them, then why not? Yeah. Lastly, we had a lore post, and this is a lore post I actually read. They referenced fixing. This was for the Xenothreat assessment. So this was after Xenothreat is over. They spoke to actually the lady who was communicating to us during the event from the CDF. And they referenced fixing the friendly fire issues. That was like kind of a bug in the game, I guess. And also referenced the fact that Xenothreat is still out there, and we will likely see them again. So that does it for this week's Week in Review, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and yeah, make sure you guys check out my live stream if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.